Be sure to subscribe and click on the bell for notifications on future uploads. Hi little one, Someone Bard here, or you can call me Zoe. Well, it's the month of September now, and that means that I had to go over the movies I saw in theaters in August 2022. 7 of them to be exact. Yeah, you heard me, 7 of them. And 3 of these movies begin with the letter B. What a coincidence. So let's start off with the first movie that I saw in theaters in August, and in IMAX at that. It has some neat comedy bits, some okay bits, but it's pretty complicated at best. Or at worst. I don't know. Bullet Train. Director David Leitch has made quite a complicated crime, mystery, action comedy that's based on a novel of the same name by Kotaro Isaka, with alright characters, a bit of a jumbled story, and fine effects. While it's big on violence and action, more so than Leitch's previous film Deadpool 2, it doesn't offer much laughs as most of the humor is very quick and its setup goes all over the place, especially when linking it all together by the end. Not helping matters when the advertising is all on Brad Pitt's character, yet the other characters get as much screen time, or slightly more than Pitt. As such, it's a complex mess of a film with lots of characters to follow and a plot involving the Japanese mafia and a briefcase getting passed around as everyone's in on it for various reasons, and with very little resolution to it, and the jokes not landing as hard as I expected, with only one exception. And though the action, violence, and effects are immense and kept my interest enough, they're not quite there when the overall narrative and comedy is pretty weak. But at least it's neat to hear Japanese renditions of Staying Alive and Holding Out for a Hero, and I would take them into consideration, along with the action, effects, and violence. 2.5 mixed stars. This next one I'll be taking a look at, despite some of the talk around it for a while, is just okay. It is simply titled, in just one word, Fall. Director Scott Mann has made an okay thriller with okay characters, an okay story, and yes, okay effects. While there is an element of suspense involving acrophobia, fear of heights, and drama with the loss of a loved one, especially in a story about 2 friends getting stuck on a tower 2,000 feet above ground in an attempt to drop the ashes of a husband who died in a mountain climbing accident. But it doesn't help that a simple plot and occasional moments of fear I had in following these women just didn't sit right with me. On top of that, no pun intended, there's many instances of these characters never getting rescued, which kind of frustrates me, and while it does emphasize the idea of being brave and doing things yourself, which the film does show and do, I was wanting it all to end as soon as these characters got stuck. And though it does end well, and with a message of life being too short, I felt it could have been done better. 2.5 mixed stars. This next film is a murder mystery comedy. Not one that I think is funny or horrifying, but it does have an interesting mystery going on, even if it doesn't go all the way with it. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Director Hyla Region has made an alright mystery murder with alright characters, an alright story, and fine effects when needed. In some ways, I initially thought the plot was going to be of an innocent party game between young adults or older teens, and would result in murder of one of their friends, and each of them suspects one another of killing as they're the only people around in one house. And it sort of does, but not to what I thought it would be, as it revolves around secrets, lies, and betrayals of love and respect each of the characters go through, even before their party started. As such, I was wondering where all of it was going, and I was getting into the mystery itself. Yet in the end, all the blaming and additional killings became pointless when the quote-unquote killer is revealed. But for what it's worth, it's fine with its setup, occasional humor, suspense, and the characters, even if they're mean-spirited towards one another. But it's more of a character study than full-on mystery, and thus, it's a bit average. 2.5 mixed stars. But this next one, on the other hand, is another killer animal movie, but a neat one at that. And it's got some good things in it and some okay things in it. But let's just get into it. Beast. Director Baltasar Kormákur has made a decent movie with fine characters, a fine story, and decent effects. It's very much a horror thriller set in Africa of a rogue lion attacking humans in its path. And while a movie of this nature hasn't been done in a long while, that of a wild killer animal, there is a definite reason for the lion's behavior than other killer animal movies. And there's a story involving a father and his daughters visiting Africa and trying to survive the lion encounter. Yet there are some scenes that are done in one shot, and a part of me would have liked it a bit more if the entire film acted in one shot. Those certain scenes would make the one-shot film idea not feel right. But through it all, it's a bit decent, even with the tame, violent content and CG lions that work very well since Disney's The Lion King from 2019. 2.5 plus stars. This next film is based on a popular anime that I have heard of many times before, but I never seen. And this is my first movie and my first introduction to it, which is just fine. Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Director Tatsuro Kodama has made a neat action anime film featuring characters from the popular Dragon Ball franchise created by Akira Toriyama, and this movie has neat characters, an alright story, and good animation. While I haven't seen any Dragon Ball episodes, series, or movies, I am aware of it to an extent by knowing character names, action movements, and of course, the memes. But for this movie alone, that's alright. Even though there's a few scenes in the middle that felt unnecessary, except for an end credit scene, and many instances of expositions and recaps of previous Dragon Ball shows, the film works fairly enough in its big action, nice humor, nearly likable characters, and its use of 2D and 3D hybrid animation. Plus, its climax is fairly paced on the ones in My Hero Academia and Demon Slayer from last year. As for being my first exposure to Dragon Ball, it's not much, and I probably should have seen the franchise from the beginning, with how much has changed and the amount of characters involved. Otherwise, it's a nearly fine start. 2.5 mixed stars. And this next one, which is the latest from the director of Babe Pig in the City, Mad Max Fury Road, Happy Feet, and The Witches of Eastwick, is quite something. But in an okay sort of way. You'll see what I mean. 3,000 Years of Longing. Director George Miller has made an okay fantasy that's based on the book The Din in the Nightingale's Eye by A.S. Byatt, with okay characters, a fine enough story, and amazing effects. While I myself am not a fan of George Miller's work, at least from what I've seen so far, this one's an adequate film of his, of a woman fighting a djinn who tells of his past and his desire for 3 wishes from each person he encountered, and eventually wants her wishes. In short, it's a unique and maybe even original take on the djinn and how the djinn works, and the visuals do work to it. However, there are points in the film that I quite don't understand, which includes the ending, and sometimes it's on the female lead. But I do feel the film did fine enough in every other part, and in the end, it's just alright. 2.5 mixed stars. And the last movie I'll be taking a look at is quite an interesting vampire movie, in that it does get interesting just as it goes on, and until the end, when it gets better. The Invitation. Director Jessica M. Thompson has done a fine job of making a vampire horror movie with alright characters, an okay story, and decent effects. It's quite an interesting take on the genre, and yes, while there are a few tropes associated with vampires, not to mention references to Dracula, they aren't always abundant, and the way the film goes nearly tricks on who's the monster or monsters of it, and the fact that the word vampire is never said in the entire movie. And while most of it isn't scary, apart from a jump scare or two, one being very effective, and the final moments of the film, except for one effect that seems a bit poor, are quite satisfying. Overall, this is a neat horror film that adds some fine changes to the vampire lore, with an alright atmosphere and ending, but isn't quite there with its scares. 2.5 plus stars. And that is it. So thank you for joining me. Like, comment, subscribe, follow on Facebook or Twitter, support me on Patreon, and until next time for a new video.